Recently, new reports said that Tylenol could be used to treat anxiety. But before you run to the medicine cabinet, you need to know how dangerous something as simple as a Tylenol can be. I have attorney Troy Rafferty with me now to discuss those dangers. Troy, you'd like to think that where something is almost ubiquitous as Tylenol, that people have been buying for years, and I think, 8 billion pills, tablets sold, capsules every year, you would think that somebody's looked at the problems that we're seeing now, that are surfacing now, and said, gee whiz, maybe we ought to take another look or put a better warning on this product.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right, Mike. And the reality is that Johnson & Johnson and its subsidiary McNeil have promoted this drug for literally decades as being really one of the safest drugs in the world. That's really what they try to convince everyone of, and that's one of their big marketing ploys. But the reality is that acetaminophen and has been known for years to be extraordinarily toxic, especially to the liver. It's in the U.S. alone, it's the leading cause of acute liver failure in the United States, accounting for 450 deaths per year in the United States, 20,000 hospitalizations, 56,000 emergency room visits. So it is not at all the drug that certainly Johnson & Johnson and McNeil want to put out there to the public.
How have they kept this under wraps, Troy? I mean, if you really look at this story, these studies that are coming out now are showing that the first theory that we used to hear from the Tylenol people was that it wasn't really the Tylenol, it wasn't the acetaminophen that was causing the problem. It's hydrocodone. But now we find out, no, it was specifically the acetaminophen. And so what you wonder is, how has Johnson & Johnson been able to keep this kind of under wraps for so long?
Well, acetaminophen, I think, in addition to their marketing strategy of getting people to believe that this is just the safest drug there is out on the market, the other issue is the fact that acetaminophen has been out on the market for literally 50 years or more. And because it's been on the market for so long, it's actually, it was grandfathered in. Acetaminophen was actually grandfathered in, and so it didn't have to go through a lot of the onerous FDA processes that a current drug would have to go through. And so a lot of those things start to play into the entire story. And when you start looking at the devastating effect that acetaminophen has on the liver, and in particular, especially when it's taken in conjunction with other drugs, or it's taken at even regularly at recommended doses or just over the recommended doses, it's something that certainly, as you said at the beginning of this particular segment, this is something that needs to be explored and disclosed to the U.S.
Well, isn't part of the problem, Troy, when we see a recommended dosage on especially an over-the-counter, we assume that there is some kind of grace amount beyond that. There's some fudge factor. But apparently with Tylenol, there is no fudge factor, because people take the Tylenol and then they take something else that also has acetaminophen in it, and before you know it, they are in complete acute liver failure. I mean, isn't that kind of what the story is all about here, that this is a story that hasn't been told?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And what a lot of people don't realize, Mike, is when you take acetaminophen, it's processed through your liver, as almost everything we take into our body is, and especially the drugs. And when it's processed through your liver, it actually becomes a very toxic byproduct, NAPQI, and your body has to excrete that, and it's got to excrete it completely and quickly. And if it doesn't, and if there's something else going on in your body, whether it's another drug or some other interaction, or your body is not producing the chemical that's needed to help excrete it, that's when all of a sudden it can become very toxic and take your person into acute liver failure, which is just a horrendous medical condition.
Well, part of it is that there's a unique metabolic avenue that is used by Tylenol that also can, once the liver starts going, of course, that starts affecting the renal system, the kidneys. And I think what is concerning me is why there isn't a warning that actually tells you a little bit more than the fact. I mean, when you say if you take this medicine, you know, liver failure can occur with A, B, C, and D. They could lay out very specifically what the liver failures are about. It's not just somebody who happens to drink alcohol and then take Tylenol. There's all kinds. I mean, that's the way Johnson & Johnson has sold this. Gee whiz, don't drink and take Tylenol and you're going to be okay. Nothing's farther from the truth, is it?
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's unfortunately what kind of has become the common thought process of people who are taking acetaminophen and Tylenol products is, quite frankly, well, you know, it says on the label not to drink or not to take it if I drink more than, you know, so many drinks per day. But the reality is it's not just alcohol. There's any number of factors that can play into why Tylenol, and in particular the acetaminophen, which is obviously the active ingredient in Tylenol, can send someone into acute liver failure.
Yeah, the problem with this story, again, Troy, it's one of those stories that traditional media hasn't talked about, and it's very obvious why. Johnson & Johnson is a huge, huge advertiser on all the networks, and so if we don't get the story out, sources like us don't get the story out, the story will never be told. Troy Rafferty, thank you for joining me. I hope it informs the public, I hope it informs consumers about what the potential dangers are, and they'll pay attention to the stories it develops. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Mike.
That's it for this week's Ring of Fire, but you can keep up with us throughout the week online at ringoffireradio.com or on Twitter at Ring of Fire Radio and on Facebook. I'm Mike Papantonio, and we'll see you next week right here on Ring of Fire.
You're watching Free Speech TV.